This week on the Virtual Skeptics, Bob has bad news about aliens. Eve has good news and bad news about Santa. Barb has bad news about her voice. And Tim has bad news for homeopaths. Hi there. I am your host, Tim Farley, filling in for Brian Gregory, our normal host, and this is Virtual Skeptics. Let me introduce our panel for this week. We have, as usual, Bob Blaskowitz, CSI's conspiracy guy, web columnist, blogger for Skeptical Humanities and Skepticality contributor. Eve Siebert, editor and blogger at Skeptical Humanities. And her cat. Contributor to Skepticality and skeptic.com. And me. I'm Tim Farley, creator of What's the Harm, former JREF fellow, and prize-winning Instagram photographer. Ride that through the end of the year, I think. And we are live at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday. So if you're watching us live, you can ask us questions on the YouTube chat. Just click through wherever you're viewing this video so that you're on a YouTube webpage, and you should see a chat over to the right. Or use the Virtual Skeptics hashtag on Twitter, and we should see it. Hi, everybody.
Howdy.
How are things going?
Things are good. It's apparently Christmas.
It is apparently Christmas.
We're on Christmas time.
Well, we actually had snow last week here in Atlanta, a rare, actual sticky build-up snow. People were building snowmen in my neighborhood that actually were higher than this big.
So how was traffic?
Traffic was okay. We had...
I can remember not so long ago.
Yeah. Well, I think we learned our lesson on that one. This one also happened on a Friday, and the snow started midday. But it started slow enough, and people got enough warning that I think it cause a disaster.
Eve?
So that was fun.
We snowed too.
Would you like to invite Jesse to be on the show today?
I have. He's wandered off again.
Substituting for Barbara, whose voice did not allow her to end tonight.
And he's loud enough for 3 Barb.
Yeah.
Oh, he'd love to talk about King Rats.
All right. Well, we don't have a skeptic trivia question tonight, so I think we'll just jump right into Bob's segment.
Okay, so hold on really quick.
We're holding.
How I do this. I should have. There we go. This is what I wanted. Here we go. Okay, enough with the funny music. So the federal government has been hiding something from us, as we always suspected. This time it is a $22 million program called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or NAMBLA. No. So it's from 2007 to 2012. It was run, this office on the 5th floor of C Wing of the Pentagon was run by an intelligence official, a military intelligence official by the name of Luis Elizondo. It sounds like it has carried on, maybe informally. The current status of it doesn't seem quite clear from the Times report, but this came out a couple of days ago that there had been another one of these kind of Project Blue Book type offices looking into potential threats from unidentified aircraft or just weird things that you see. And there is a real there's a legitimate military need to be aware of what's in your skies, and to, if people are probing your defenses, you want to be able to be aware of that. And so it makes sense that when there's things that that people in the service are having a hard time not making sense of, I think it's totally reasonable to have something, people devoted to looking for that. But these people kind of seem like true believers out the gate. The sponsor was the former majority leader, Harry Reid, back when the Democrats were in the majority in the Senate. Sorry, nostalgia there for a sec. And most of this money comes from Robert Bigelow. Do you know Bigelow Aerospace? Do you know what they do? So they're working on inflatable habitats. That's their contribution to the space program at this point. I think they want to do hotels or something like that in the long run, but there may be one attached to the space station now.
Yeah, they were supposed to be testing one.
Yeah, so which is a cool idea. But anyway, so he seems to have been the part of the impetus for this. Someone from the intelligence community came to him and said that they wanted to start this, and then he went to his friend Harry Reid, and the money was allocated, and most of the money went to the guy who suggested it, Bigelow. And it's interesting. Like when I saw this online, I was like, okay, show me the tech. What do you? And they're actually they had under Mr. Bigelow's direction, the company modified buildings in Las Vegas for the storage of metal alloys and other materials that Mr. Elizondo and program contractors who were hired by Bigelow said had been recovered from unidentified aerial phenomena. And you think like, holy shit, like this is except we don't find out what they are. They don't tell us. They say that they tack on a statement by a guy who had done the Men Who Stare at Goats type stuff, researching psychic telekinesis or telepathic abilities for the military. And he's like, well, you look at this stuff and it's like, I believe the quote was like giving a garage door opener to Leonardo. He's just trying to figure out what this plastic stuff is. He has no idea about the electromagnetic properties. And you're just like, yeah. So, but he's just kind of dropped in there, and it doesn't seem clear that he's related to the project or knows what it is, or why this ding dong would have access to classified information. So the whole thing seems kind of sketchy to me. Now, of course, I want to believe, but they don't really offer you anything to bite down on. Now, an interesting video has been circulating with it, and it's of it looks like the heads-up display of an object being tracked. I don't think it's not true color. It's probably infrared or something. But in the original Times piece, they said it's expletive going on or something. That was what the captioning said. It's blanking going on. There are a bunch of them. Look on the essay or something like that. And that's kind of that's how it originally aired. They updated it when they said it's a drone. It's a drone. They say it on there. It's a drone. There goes your fucking story.
Right. It could be an alien drone.
Yeah, it's probably an alien drone. That's totally
space drones.
Just to make things complicated, right? But I saw it circulating on CNN and CBS and all these other places where they cut that first bit out where they say it's a drone. And and PBS did it too. And I was just like, you are horrible people sensationalizing this when the explanation is right there. So I don't know. I was very disappointed in that. Now, why did this come up now? Well, Elizondo, the military intelligence officer who's running this place, he resigned because he thought there was too much secrecy, and he's now joining with two other officials who are related to the project in a commercial venture, which is called To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, and they're currently speaking in order to raise money to study UFOs. And that's where this comes from. That's the impetus behind this, as far as I can tell. It's kind of a publicity stunt.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. I was very disappointed in the Times for airing this. I mean, I think it's interesting, and it would be a legit story if it didn't so clearly look like the Times was being played, and the Times looked like they were playing along.
Yeah.
I don't know. So
you kind of wonder whether there's so much ridiculous stuff coming out of Washington these days, minute by minute. You wonder whether some of these newspapers are like, we got to figure out something. Let's find the one story that'll usurp, and nothing does. Someone pointed out back in November, remember when they were having that war trial for war criminals from the Bosnian War, and this guy drinks poison on live TV.
Yeah.
And people were pointing out on Twitter, someone just drank poison on live TV and died, and no one's paying attention to it because there's so much ridiculous crap happening with the U.S. government right now.
Oh, yeah. Do you remember way back in the day when the Republicans passed that horrible tax bill? I can remember when they did that.
Remember when we were going to talk about happy things?
Happy things?
Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas.
Yeah. Was that it, Bob?
That's what I got. It's a big load of stinking nothing. Really, I mean, it's kind of interesting, but it was just handled badly and in the most sensational way.
Yeah.
Which kind of sapped it of its actual value, right?
Yeah. It's kind of the typical thing. Something I've been getting frustrated with lately is there's a couple of podcasts that I listen to that are sort of skeptic adjacent, like they sort of vary into skeptic topics. And when I've noticed that these podcasts were doing, I'm not going to name which podcast it is because I don't want to get into it, but I thought it was a good thing. It's like, oh, this is good because you notice, we've noticed over the years of doing this show, like things like Cracked, the comedy website, will do articles that are clearly skeptical in nature. And now that fact checking's become a big thing, a lot of websites are into the, sort of use your critical thinking skills. Why is this website wrong? Can you see why this news story is fake? And but one of the things that's been bugging me about some of these podcasts and just straight out journalism too is that they'll jump into one of these stories like UFOs, and you would think that the journalist or podcaster would say to themselves, there must be somebody who has dealt with this issue over the years that maybe I should get. And they always end up getting like the worst expert, like the weird crackpot dude. And it's like, I listened to this one podcast and they did a whole episode on ghosts, and I'm just waiting for Joe Nickel to show up in the podcast, and he never does. And it's like, how do you do an entire hour-long podcast on the subject of do ghosts exist and never figure out that you should be talking to Joe Nickel in Buffalo, New York? I don't understand how poor of a journalist you can be and not find that source. And it's so frustrating. I was literally screaming at my podcasting device.
Yeah.
And I think I'll unsubscribe to this particular podcast because they did it again on some other skeptic adjacent topic. I forget what it was, Bigfoot or something like that. And it's like, I think on their Bigfoot one, they actually ended up talking to one of the legit experts. But they always end up, it's always like more than halfway through the show before they end up talking to the science-based guy.
Well, I saw Seth Shostak in a couple of things with the UFO thing. Although I'll tell you, in the cover, the one you're talking about, the homeopathy thing, I saw CBS saying homeopathy is an ancient practice. It's like the hell it is. It's modern. It's
Yep.
To people, I mean, this is a young country, and almost
it's
anything
younger
is
than the country.
Yeah, but still.
Yep. Well, you gave me a good segue there, Bob.
I do what I can.
That is what I'm going to be talking about. If you paid attention to the news this week, in the U.S., a year or so ago, year and a half ago, there were some hearings that the FDA had, which were very entertaining, because they were considering changing the way they deal with homeopathic medications. And homeopathic medications have been a big focus for skeptic groups in the U.S. and in England, because it seems like such low-hanging fruit. There's no science behind it. There's no good evidence. The studies that do exist are really poor. For a lot of the remedies, there's no evidence whatsoever. You have homeopathic Berlin Wall and homeopathic moonlight and crap like that. No one has ever studied those things. There's no peer-reviewed studies on those whack-ball ones. And the ones that are, of a lot of use and sold, millions of dollars of which are sold, it's just very poor evidence. And and we all know the story about how, at least in the U.S., it kind of got grandfathered in when they created the FDA in the 1930s. They sort of said, well, we don't have time to go through and approve all the existing medicines under the new regulation, so we'll just grandfather in all the medicines. And it happened that one of the senators was a homeopath, so he had all the homeopathic remedies grandfathered in. And ever since then, they've kind of used a light touch to regulate it, because, frankly, a lot of homeopathic remedies don't do a lot of harm. They just waste people's money. But what's been happening in the last few years is people, as these homeopathic companies become more bigger, and you can buy them in any pharmacy right down the aisle from regular medicine that actually contains things. And people are, have legitimate criticisms of big pharma and don't like using chemicals or whatever, and touchy-feely organic and all that. So people are looking for alternatives. So the use of homeopathy has gone up, and as a result, the admittedly rare, harmful results are becoming more and more common. And there have been some incidents in the last few years with homeopathic teething remedies for toddlers and babies. And other remedies that actually are
hated with belladonna.
Yeah, well, there's stuff with actual harmful substances in there. And if you're talking about kind of the lowest grades of homeopathy, what they call 1X and 2X and 1C, there actually is a little tiny, tiny bit of the chemical in there, as opposed to when you get up to like 1030C and some of the ridiculous dilutions of homeopathy where there's literally not even one molecule of the original stuff in it. But some of the stuff that's sold is like 1X, 2X, which means there's some of the stuff in there, and which also means that if the company that makes this stuff wasn't careful, you could get a real dose of something. And what we've learned...
A real dose of Berlin Wall.
A real dose of Berlin And what we've learned...
Or that would be true if it were regulated and...
Right.
Actually knew what was in it, but
well, and that's the thing. Yeah, they have very poor. We found that some of these companies have very poor quality control, and the New York State authorities found that when they did genetic tests on herbal remedies, they didn't have the thing that it said on the package in there, at least according to the genetic test. Now, there's arguments about whether or not they did those tests right. But so the FDA, as a result of those hearings, and there were a lot of skeptics, I think some folks from science-based medicine, some folks from CSI testified at those hearings. And of course, a ton of homeopaths and cranks also testified. But the FDA, amazingly enough, has decided that they're going to change their guidance, which the current guidance that they grew under was written in 1988, which is going on 30 years ago now. So they wanted to revisit it. And what they've come up with is they're going to give their basically their regulators some guidance of what cases to pay attention to. And they're basically looking for the types of cases that end up on what's the harm, right? Things that have safety issues, like, poor quality control at the manufacturer, things that have a dangerous substance like belladonna in there diluted, anything that's not administered by either orally, you swallow it, or topical, rub it on your skin. Because there are some things that are done with eye drops, homeopathic eye drops, and there are things done with injection. And the problem with that is that, you take it gets dissolved in your stomach and whatnot. So there's a limit to how much trouble it can cause. But you inject something, and
that's the first line of defenses. If it's contaminated,
right?
Enjoy your sepsis.
So they're gonna. The other things they're looking for are things that are intended to treat serious or life-threatening illnesses. And one of the ones that comes up all the time is there are homeopaths to this day who claim they can inoculate you against malaria with a homeopathic remedy, which of course is complete nonsense and very dangerous if you're traveling to a country where malaria is there, because it keeps you from taking the actual medicine you need to take to prepare to go to a country where there is malaria. And products that are targeted for vulnerable infants or the elderly, or obviously in those populations, any sort of these other things like toxic substances or safety issues can be exacerbated. What they're going to do is, they're still going to do what they do, take complaints from the public, look at safety reports and things like that. But based on these guidelines, I assume they will then take action more vigorously. So, for instance, if people complain that, or they get reports of kids getting sick from homeopathic remedy, then they might have that remedy taken off the market, or fine the company that made it, or things like that. So,
hundreds of dollars worth of fines.
Yeah, well, we'll see. It remains to be seen. This is a proposed rulemaking, so it is posted on the FDA website, and it has what I just said in more detail. And they're taking 90 days of commentary on it from the public. And the commentary site is up and running as of today. And right this second, it has only 6 comments.
You're kidding.
I think the press release on this was on Monday, but I think all the comments are dated today. So I think the comment site on it's on regulations.gov, G-O-V. So if you go to regulations.gov,
and 6 comments, does that mean that there's in homeopathic terms, it's an enormous outpouring of advice?
Yeah.
It's the dumbest thing.
Already seeing, I already see 2 comments that seem to be cut and paste copies of each other, okay, which are pro homeopathy. But several of there's 2 comments that are skeptical. So obviously skeptics need to get in there, and especially if you have some knowledge of homeopathic remedies or some comments? You feel like you can give them some advice about how to proceed on this, or you just want to give them a high five and say you like what they're doing? It's your right as an American to make a comment in there. So go to regulations.gov and search for homeopathy, and it's the first link that comes up, and there's a page where you can enter your comment.
Just don't use the term science-based, evidence-based, diversity, vulnerable, fetus, and a bunch of other.
Yeah, especially
different organization.
Yeah. So that's all I got. Let's see.
I noticed in some of the stuff related to this that they were talking about a lot of the cases and the types of things that skeptics have been going on about. The belladonna, the people who use homeopathy to treat things like cancer. And then the one that's kind of a ripe slice of hell in the last couple of years was homeopathic asthma inhalers and that sort of thing. Which, if somebody has an attack and they're getting a whiff of nothing, that could be really, really dangerous.
Yeah, that's dangerous. I mean, there's many instances of people dying from an asthma attack. That happens all the time. So, yeah, that would definitely this guidance. So hopefully we can get a few of these things. I'm sure some of the stupid flu medication will probably never go off the market. But the homeopathic flu medication that boron sells, but maybe we can get that asthma stuff and the malaria stuff and some of these teething things and get FDA to pull them off the market, so that they won't be out there wasting people's time and money. All right, I don't see any questions for that, so I think we can go on to Eve, who's going to ruin Santa Claus for us.
No, it's a happy, joyful story.
Oh, okay.
The good news about Santa, he's real. Ooh. The bad news about Santa, if you could bring up the first slide.
Sure.
Oh, dear. Now, actually, those dates are off by quite a bit. But the fact remains that Santa is no more. He has ceased to be. He's expired, gone to meet his maker, etc. Yes. His bones, quite a large number of bones, are scattered across the Christian world. The Santa Claus legend, of course, is associated with stories surrounding St. Nicholas, particularly his supposed habit of secretly giving gifts. Of course, though, a lot of unrelated folklore, fiction, and advertising have been added to the St. Nicholas story. But he's there in the background, and he's the one, actually, who's quite dead. He did, though, exist. He was born in the late 3rd century in Asia Minor. He was imprisoned during the reign of Emperor Diocletian. Under the Christian-friendly Constantine, he became Bishop of Myra in modern-day Turkey. He attended the First Council of Nicaea, which, despite what people may tell you, did not decide which works made it into the Bible and which works didn't make it into the Bible. Many centuries after his death, in 1087 to be precise, some Italian sailors brought around half of the bones alleged to belong to Nicholas to Bari in Italy. If you can bring up the next slide. These are his bones, which were uncovered, I think, in the 50s at some point. Now, the bones that the Bari sailors somehow left behind were later taken by Venetian sailors to Venice. It's all really a bit complicated. There were wars. There were concerns of Muslim Turks sort of taking over the area and Nicholas's tomb becoming inaccessible. Venice and Bari vying for the bones. The Bari sailors, who sometimes are depicted as basically pirates, at other times were guided by a vision, going to take the bones. the Orthodox monks who were at the church where the bones were held, going, no, those are. Where are you going with those? To complicate matters further, many other churches around the world claim to have bits and pieces of Nicholas. Although I should say, apparently there was an anatomical study of the Bari relics, and they seem to be complementary with the Venice relics. So it's at least they're consistent that they may come from the same body, although I don't know how carefully they were studied. But so other places have claimed to have bits and pieces of Nicholas. Other places claim to have the original tomb or the real bones. There's a place in Ireland that claims to have Nicholas's bones, but only people like in that village really believe that. Yeah. The Bari relics,
and then only during tourist season. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that some churches claim to have bits and pieces, because that's a common thing in a Roman Catholic church to have a relic.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the altar, so they'll have like a tiny little chip of a bone of some saint or something.
Yes, sometimes of saints who never existed.
Yeah.
And I believe, aren't there at least like 12 foreskins of Jesus out there?
There are quite a few foreskins, yeah.
Son of God, indeed.
Little buggers kept growing back. There are bits of bread from the loaves and fishes, or were miracle. All sorts of things. All sorts of things. I saw Mary Magdalene's hair, supposedly, and Lazarus's skull.
Yeah, pieces of hair are very common.
Anyway, the Bari relics supposedly exude a miraculous liquid called manna or myrrh. Bari, I should mention, is a harbor, and the tomb is below sea level. Make of that what you will. In relation to the liquid. In 2009, Turkey demanded that Italy return the relics. It has not. The pelvis in the Bari tomb is incomplete. Only the left ilium remains. It's not known what the pelvis situation is in Venice. But meanwhile, in Illinois, Father Dennis O'Neill from St. Martha of Bethany Church, Shrine of All Saints in Morton Grove outside Chicago, has among his impressive relic collection a left pubis, which allegedly belongs to St. Nicholas. If you can bring up the next slide. That.
I recognize that pubis anywhere.
Well, the bone originally came from a church in Lyon, France. I don't know how he got it from them, because usually it's like a going out of business sale of their relics or something. I don't know. But because Bari's pelvis is incomplete, it's just the left ilium, and this is the left pubis, it is possible that they come from the same skeleton. This bone was handed over to Oxford University's Relics Cluster at Keble College's Advanced Studies Center. According to its webpage, the Relics Cluster is a multidisciplinary group of researchers interested in applying studies of text, art, and science to improve our understanding of relics, objects of cultural, historical, and religious significance. Now, I regret to inform you that Oxford's Relic Cluster does not employ the Oxford comma. I personally don't give a shit unless it's needed for clarity, but some people are obsessed. And so, yeah. You may just dismiss anything they have to say because of their lack of the Oxford comma. Anyway, Tom Higham.
I take them seriously now, honestly.
Yeah. Tom Higham and George Kazan, the directors of the Relics Cluster, carbon dated a microsample from Father O'Neill's relic. This is the first time a bone associated with St. Nicholas has been subjected to carbon dating, I believe. The pubis was dated to the 4th century. Nicholas is supposed to have died around 343, so the bone is the right age. Of course, that doesn't mean it really belonged to Nicholas. It also doesn't necessarily mean it belongs to the same man speaking mana, Bari, Mana and Barry, or Mana and Bari. Although it is a distinct possibility, again, because they are two different parts of the pelvis. The fact that the date is consistent with Nicholas's lifespan is actually pretty unusual. The relics cluster has tested a lot of relics, and most of them have not belonged to the right time period. According to Higgin,
Or species.
many relics. Sorry?
Or species. Sorry.
I couldn't. Well,
I said or species.
Or species.
yes, okay. Many relics that we study turn out to date to a period somewhat later than the historic attestation would suggest. This bone fragment, in contrast, suggests that we could possibly be looking at remains from St. Nicholas himself. Kazan adds, these results encourage us to now turn to the Bari and Venice relics to attempt to show that the bone remains are from the same individual. We can do this using ancient paleogenomics or DNA testing. It's exciting to think that these relics, which date from such an ancient time, could in fact be genuine. I don't know whether Bari and Venice will be willing to make their relics available for study. And of course, the results at this point don't really prove very much. And even if the left pubis bone ends up matching both the Bari and the Venice relics, the results really don't have any religious significance. Science probably isn't going to show that the Bari bones are doing something damply miraculous. But it may show that at least every once in a while, relic hunters got the right guy. And if you're thinking, oh, how convenient that the relics cluster made this announcement so close to Christmas, well, you're just horrible and cynical, because the announcement was made on December 6th, and that's St. Nicholas Day.
Ah.
So it has nothing to do with Christmas whatsoever.
So, yeah.
That's it.
All right. Well, let's see if we have any questions. I don't see any.
Sorry.
All right.
It was the lively banter that made me yawn.
Yep. All right. Well, I guess we're sort of reaching the end of the show.
All right.
Do we have books?
Yeah. Oh, we should, for announcements, we should perhaps mention that virtual skeptic emerita Sharon Hill has a new book recently published.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Typical Americans.
Yep.
Everyone should totally go out and buy, or stay in and buy it from Amazon.
There you go.
Right. Yeah.
Good stuff.
But yeah, book.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Let me find mine. Who's got theirs ready?
I do.
Okay, Eve, go.
Mention may be made of Krapp's opinion, adumbrated by Elton, that Lothbrok, meaning shaggy breech, was originally an Old Norse epithet for hawk or sparrowhawk. I can find no real support for this view. Howbrok, as opposed to Lothbrok, occurs, it is true, as a poetic appellation for hawk in the younger of the two groups of Thular, or poetic lists, preserved in manuscripts of Snorri's Prose Edda, that is the group dating probably from the 13th century, etc., etc. But basically, there's no proof, is what he's saying.
All right.
And
Bob?
perhaps wrong.
Yep. For by the late 19th century, counter-Enlightenment superstition and Enlightenment rationalism had infected each other and a fin de siècle rosy-cheeked romanticism, a kind of double exposure in which pseudoscience and what we'll come to call pseudo-spirituality got spliced together with reactionary eugenics of Europe and America. All this was the hoax's hunting ground, whiteness offset by a symbolic black ground. Huh. He's talking about the Cottingley fairies. Weird.
All right. The first nerd was Mike Rice, whom I met when I spent a few days with the writers of The Simpsons. Just like Maggie, he displayed his mathematical talents while playing with building blocks as a toddler. He distinctly recalls a moment when he observed that blocks obeyed a binary law, inasmuch as two of the smallest blocks were the same size as one medium block, while two of the medium blocks were the same size as one large block, and two of the large blocks equaled one very large block. As soon as he could read, Rice's mathematical interest matured into a love of puzzles. All right, Eve, what was yours?
Studies in Ragnar Saga Lothbrokr and its major Scandinavian analogs by Rory McTurk. I believe he ends up saying that Lothbrok actually refers to, is feminine, refers to a woman.
All right, Bob.
Tome? Yeah, I read from Bunk, The Rise of Hoaxes, Humbug, Plagiarists, Phonies, Post-Facts, and Fake News by Kevin Young. It looks like it's going to be about, well, at least in part about the way in which racism like informs freak shows and stuff. So, yeah.
All right, and I was reading from The Simpsons Mathematical Secrets.
I knew that.
The Simpsons and Their Mathematical Secrets by skeptic friend Simon Singh.
Yeah, I used that in my writing about science and math class this semester. That was one of the readings. There's a lot about math culture in there. You know, it's not just The Simpsons. It's like to introduce you to these people doing puzzles.
Right. Yeah, it's cool. I love that kind of sort of different topics sort of intersect in a weird way and pull it all together and make a book out of it. Yep. All right. Everybody have a good holiday. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
Have a good life day.
Life day with your Wookiee.
And we may be back next week, but it's iffy.
Yeah, we'll see. I just put it in there as the time for next week, but we'll see whether or not everybody's back from their travel in time for the show next week. So cross your fingers. And
we're skeptics.
Music ready. And now it is time to dance.
Boom, boom, boom.
The Virtual Skeptics is an independent production of whatsaharm.net, Skeptical Humanities, Brian Gregory, ICBS Everywhere, and Doubtful News. Our logo was designed by Sarah Mayhew at sarahmayhew.com. Our theme music is by Musicant and is used with permission.